That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, guys, I already know we are going to be getting an insane amount of hate for this video, which is completely fine. Of course, go down to the comment section. Literally, anytime you think I say something stupid in any video, it doesn't matter what it is, go to the comment section. Let me know I'm being stupid. But more importantly, let me know why I'm being stupid so you can try to change my mind. But I really want everybody to understand what we are trying to do with this video, and that is we are trying to determine worst case scenario. We are looking at every player that you roster in Dynasty, not only with their median projected outcomes, not only with what is probably going to happen, but you need to look at best case scenario and worst case scenario. You have to understand the difference between the two. And if you're building a team where you heavily rely on only 2 or 3 players as core pieces of your team going forward, and you really don't understand the contract situation that they may be faced in 12 months, I mean, I think you are doing yourself a disservice. Because how many people a year ago would think that right now it looks like Julio Jones and his own future is in jeopardy? How many people would have assumed that Zach Ertz was essentially just not going to be a player that you're looking at? We really have to go through with these guys and look at who has guaranteed jobs this upcoming season based on their contract situation. And obviously, we're not focusing on anybody with their rookie contract still up, because if you're on your rookie contract, I mean, that's something that's so nice about having a DeAndre Swift, a J.K. Dobbins, a Cam Akers. I mean, you know that player's locked in. You really don't have to worry about it. But we are looking at these guys that are on their veteran deals, and we're trying to identify players that maybe aren't as safe as you assume. So, of course, before we get into the video, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and also a very exciting announcement that we do have our official Flock Meetup set for June 19th, Austin, Texas, 6 p.m. at Jester King Brewery. Of course, feel free to shoot me a DM. Feel free to leave a comment with anything that you have questions about with the details of the event. But essentially, it's probably going to be a small meetup. And if you want to come out, talk fantasy football, if you want to just come meet me and some of the other fans of this channel, please do so, because we are about to be moving out of Texas. But that's it. Let's dive into it. Let's talk about our first guy in Odell Beckham Jr. And here with Odell Beckham Jr., I mean, it's a very easy formula to look at. I mean, this is a player that I love. Literally, we have an Odell jersey behind us. I really want to set the tone with this video of me not just going through and talking about players I don't like. I really like Odell Beckham Jr. But if we are talking worst case scenario here, looking at the contracts, it doesn't get worse for Odell Beckham Jr.'s long-term job security than this deal. So he is owed $15 million in 2022. So obviously everything we're going to be focusing in on is 2022, because all these players are essentially locked in to this upcoming season. But next year, he is owed $15 million, and $0 are on the dead cap. So if this team wanted to move on from Odell Beckham Jr., they really have no consequences of doing so. He's going to be 29 years old. We have not seen a productive Odell Beckham Jr. season in a few years now, and this is a player that has consistently dealt with injuries. So I think it's very safe to assume, and this is one of the reasons I want to start it out with Odell, because I think we're going to have a few people on the same page of us and understanding how we are viewing these players in a certain light. But worst case scenario here with Odell, what happens if he comes back in week 3, and in week 3, he hurts his ankle? He has a high ankle sprain, and we don't get to see him for the rest of the year. I mean, it isn't a Michael Thomas scenario. Michael Thomas is already solidified. Michael Thomas, you don't really have to worry about. But here with Odell Beckham Jr., this team would be looking at a situation of going, hey, do we want to pay him $15 million next year? Are we willing to tie up that much money, as pretty much making him one of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL? Or would we rather just wipe our hands clean, maybe go sign a Chris Godwin and pay him a few extra million, maybe pay him $17 million instead? So if we're talking worst case scenario here, I mean, Odell Beckham Jr., it looks like he could be Dunskies in 2022, and that sucks because I have him almost everywhere. Now, another player that literally has half of that value, but I want to bring him up because he's on the same team, is going to be Jarvis Landry. It's very interesting, and maybe this speaks to the fact that we should be going out and sending trade offers for Donovan Peoples-Jones. But Jarvis Landry also has almost no dead cap in 2022. So he is going to be owed $16 million. He's going to be a 29-year-old wide receiver, and he only has $1.5 million on the dead cap. And I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to say, Mason, it's Jarvis Landry. What are you talking about? But no, we are talking worst case scenario here. What happens when Jarvis Landry comes out and he has a subpar wide receiver season at 28 years old? I mean, this is a player that already doesn't provide a ton of value for his offense, given the fact that his average depth of target is going to be near the league bottom, given the fact that he is more so a slot wide receiver rather than someone stretching the field. And we know how NFL teams really value the two different prototypes of a wide receiver. So there's a scenario where Jarvis Landry also is moved on from next year in Cleveland. I mean, this is a team that has Baker Mayfield coming to the end of his rookie contract. Just say Baker Mayfield has a very impressive season and you have him going pretty much all in, leaning on one of Jarvis Landry or Odell Beckham Jr. Then the other guy can essentially be cut scot-free. Maybe then you see the Cleveland Browns decide to invest into the wide receiver position in the loaded 2022 wide receiver draft class. But here, Jarvis Landry, I just want people to know that it's in the range of outcomes that he could also be Dunskies. Now, our next guy, going to be the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I mean, this is someone that is valued extremely high in Dynasty right now. But let's talk about Derrick Henry. Okay, so I know, guys, it's unlikely that anything happens to Derrick Henry. I mean, he just crushed everybody in the NFL with the amount of carries and the amount of rushing yards that he accumulated last year. But I need to point out the contract, and what we always talk about on this channel is the difference between a running back on their veteran deal. It doesn't matter if they were the top running back in the NFL. It doesn't matter how long they were at that peak. I mean, we just got out of an era where the top three running backs were Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, and David Johnson. These guys can wash out of the NFL as quickly as they come on as one of those elite options. So what you need is you need that guarantee. You want to see the age low. You want to make sure that they have the guaranteed money on the contract, which is why those guys on their rookie deals like a J.K. Dobbins is so valuable. But here with Derrick Henry, I mean, he's going to be 28 years old next offseason. He only has $6 million on the dead cap, and he is owed $15. Now, just say Derrick Henry, you're going Mason, they're going to lean on him one more year. Mason, he's pretty much locked and loaded into this contract. They're not going to want to save $9 million by moving on from Derrick Henry next offseason. Well, the offseason after that, he's only owed $3 million in the dead cap, and his cap hit is 15. And then he's going to be a 29-year-old running back. At that point, I think you can pretty much chalk up Derrick Henry to be a guy that's most likely going to be a cut candidate. And I know it's crazy to say, and I know nobody wants to be the guy coming out here and saying this because you're going to look like an idiot. I'm going to look like an idiot when Derrick Henry comes out, posts another 300 carry season, and then just completely wins fantasy leagues. But that's best case scenario. That is the 90th percentile outcome. You're talking about the 10th percentile outcome here. What happens with the Derrick Henry if he loses a step? What happens if you see a Le'Veon Bell? What happens if you see a David Johnson happen all over again? I mean, this is someone that has had an incredible workload, and I know that he hasn't dealt with injuries so far in his NFL career, but it's always possible for a running back that has seen this type of volume over the past 2 seasons. There's a reason that Tennessee structured his contract in a way that he doesn't have the guaranteed money. I mean, if Derrick Henry was 100% locked and loaded to this Tennessee Titans roster over the next 3 seasons, don't you think that they would have gone, hey, Derrick Henry, instead of giving you $15 million a year and only $6 million guaranteed, can we just kind of meet you halfway in the middle? Can we give you $9 million guaranteed and just $9 million a year, make it a 100% deal? No, of course they weren't going to do that because they understand the running back value, even if Derrick Henry is the best running back in the NFL right now. I mean, please understand the range of outcomes for these running backs, especially on their second contracts, is not as safe as it seems. Now, our next player going to be fitting that same mold. Let's go over to Chris Carson. Chris Carson, I think that he is mainly safe in 2022, to be completely honest. I mean, you look through, he does have $3 million on the dead cap, but his cap number is only $6 million. So this team would essentially be saving $3 million if they moved on from Chris Carson. And I think that it's hard to paint a picture of anything happening this upcoming season where they decide to make the $3 million decision to get Chris Carson off the roster. I mean, even if, just say, Chris Carson got outplayed by Rashad Penny, which I am not expecting to happen. But like I'm saying, we're talking worst case scenario here for these players. Just say worst case scenario, Chris Carson comes out, tears his ACL in week 2. All of a sudden, Rashad Penny comes in. Rashad Penny looks like an above average NFL running back. I mean, at that point, I still think they decide to keep Chris Carson versus saving an extra $3 million. Mainly what I want to focus in on is I think Chris Carson is only going to be an option for 2021 and 2022, because when you go beyond that, Chris Carson actually only has $1 million on the dead cap, which is essentially nothing. And for a 29-year-old running back, I think they're going to be unwilling to pay that overall cap hit. So Carson, a safe option this season, most likely a safe option next as well. But once you get to 2023, I think that's where you have some questions. Okay, so now let's go up. Let's stay at the running back position. Let's talk about Austin Ekeler here. Going to be a very similar situation to a Chris Carson, where I don't think that this team really has it in the range of outcomes to be willing to 100% move on from him next offseason, because next year he's only owed $6.5 million, and $3 million of that will be on the dead cap. But more importantly, it's going to be a very similar situation to Chris Carson. I mean, after next season, that's when Austin Ekeler becomes an extremely risky asset, where after next season, so we're talking 2023 here, and I understand that this is something that's going to be very hard to project out, but that's why we're viewing everything through the range of outcomes. But at that point, Austin Ekeler will be a 28-year-old running back. He'll be someone that's owed over $6.5 million and only have $1 million on the dead cap. So if this team decides to start making decisions to invest into the running back room next offseason, don't be surprised that the following year, Austin Ekeler isn't a key piece here. And I know we are just nitpicking at this point, but this is valuable information. If you're looking at a roster where you have an Austin Ekeler and you're naturally assuming that he is going to be with you through the time that he is 29, 30 years old, and I'm out here saying that's probably not the case. Austin Ekeler, probably an option for 2021, most likely 2022, but beyond that, it's hard to guarantee. So now let's go back to one of my favorite wide receivers. Let's talk about Amari Cooper. And here the Dallas Cowboys are going to be in a very interesting spot next offseason, in that they've already paid all that money to Dak Prescott. We know that the Ezekiel Elliott contract is so bad with that guaranteed money where they really don't have an option to get out from Zeke. But if you look through, I mean, this team's going to be faced with a decision. Do we pay Amari Cooper the $22 million he is owed? Or do we move on from Amari Cooper? He only has $6 million in the dead cap. And do we decide to get Michael Gallup at a discount and be able to invest onto the defensive side of the ball or possibly the offensive line? Now here, I don't have the answer to that question, and I really hope that the answer is just roll with Amari and CeeDee Lamb, let Michael Gallup walk, and just pay a little bit more of a premium to make sure you have Amari Cooper over Michael Gallup. This coming from someone who has Amari Cooper on so many dynasty leagues. But you can't ignore the fact that he is going to be a 28-year-old wide receiver. The team can save $16 million by cutting him, or possibly having him in a situation like a Julio Jones with what we're facing this offseason. And then they can go through and try to reassure the rest of the roster around Dak Prescott. So Amari Cooper, Odell Beckham Jr., both of my guys are going to be making this list, but I think it's for good reason. Now, let's just end it with one more of my players. Actually, we can talk about two more guys, but let's go back to one more of my guys, and let's talk about Juju Smith-Schuster. Okay, so here with Juju, I think we are getting to a situation where teams are kind of fed up. I mean, you see him have to accept a one-year prove-it deal to go back to Pittsburgh, and you're looking at him as a wide receiver that's only going to be 25 years old next offseason, which is ridiculous to say. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster has been an impact player in the NFL since he was 20. But you're looking at him, you're going, he has no deal on the table for 2022 yet. And this is someone that if you pull up his social media, and I know I hate to bring this up, I made fun of so many people for saying this last offseason. I called them boomers. I said they didn't know what they were talking about, but I think at some point you have to give them credit where maybe they're right, that this is a problem. This is an off-the-field concern at this point when pretty much everybody on the team is having to answer questions about it. So with Juju, I mean, he's going to be 25 this upcoming season. No deal in 2022. What happens if he has another disappointing year, and just say Pittsburgh's disappointing overall, and you just consistently hear in the news, whether it's deserved or not, whether this should be a storyline or not? The fact is, it is. The fact is, it is getting into the locker room where you're having to be asked questions about Juju and TikTok. As crazy as it sounds, as stupid as it sounds, I think that at that point, you're looking at someone that people wouldn't sign this offseason. And if he has another bad year, if he's another off-the-field concern year, at what point will they just go, Juju, hey, you're not worth the headache. You're not worth us bringing in here and having to deal with the questions. So with Juju, I know he's very young, but I think he could be put into a difficult decision where he is forced to take a significant pay cut next offseason and maybe won't have the same guaranteed role in his respective offense. Now, our last guy we are going to be talking about, kind of obvious in my opinion, but it's going to be Derek Carr. So Derek Carr, if you look at 2022, I mean, he literally has $0 on the dead cap, just like Odell Beckham Jr. He is owed $0 guaranteed, and he is owed $20 million in general. So with Derek Carr, I mean, he's playing on an offense that I know it looks like they are willing to invest into him. I know that they bring in wide receivers in the 2020 NFL draft class. I know that they really just decide to pass on a quarterback every chance they get over the past few years. But if Derek Carr has a subpar season this upcoming year, I mean, at what point would you see John Gruden and the rest of this team just go, hey, we're ready to move on? We have no repercussions for doing so. Possibly we go get a Jameis Winston. Possibly we just make a move for a veteran rather than deciding to continue to pay Derek Carr his $20 million. So that's going to be the last name we bring up. So thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I know y'all probably didn't, but go down there, drop a like anyway, because it really helps the channel. Subscribe, leave a comment. And yeah, if you want your Dynasty team broken down, we are doing that every single day over there on Patreon. I'm sure you know where to find that link. Thank you so much for everybody supporting the show. In John, Raymond, Jordan, Andrew, Walter, Dwayne, Evan, Eamon, Q, and Use the Nerd. Thank you guys.